Okay, I've already gone through the Senate. I'm going to go through the House. Okay, the House of Representatives. You have limited time to actually debate. That time is established by the House Rules Committee. In order to get anything accomplished in the House of Representatives, you must have a quorum. A quorum is when 218 members are present. It is not common for 218 members to be present in the House of Representatives all at once. So if you are a representative and your bill or your legislation is up for a vote, you can demand that a quorum is called. When a quorum is called, a bell is rung, and the members of the House of Representatives must appear in order to vote on the bill. Committee as a whole, the entire House of Representatives in this situation is considered as one committee. This speeds up the legislative process. It allows bills and resolutions to be considered without adhering to all of the formal rules of the House of Representatives. So a committee as a whole, if they wanted, it would pass an emergency budget or an emergency sanction on Iran, or if there was anything that must be taken care of quickly, the House of Representatives can act as one voting body. They don't have to break up into committee. They don't have to go into House Rules Committee, and they can just make some decisions on some legislation. And then they only need a simple majority vote for that to pass legislation. You only need a simple majority vote to pass most pieces of legislation in the Senate and most pieces of legislation in the House. It's the treaties, the approval of a presidential appointee, declaration of war is still a simple vote. Proposal of amendments. Okay, most legislation is just a simple vote. Okay, the fifth step, legislation is voted on. Okay, don't forget what influences how a congressperson votes. Okay, part of the voting process is log rolling. I'll support your bill if you support mine. You're going to care about your constituents when it's close to an election. And you're also going to think about interest groups who have given you campaign donations. Okay, once it is voted on and passed in one house, it then goes to the other house. Now the other house, the process starts all over again, and the House can completely alter, or the Senate can completely alter the legislation. Somebody just came in. That was a door closing. So they can completely change the content of a bill. The Senate can add so much pork that they might as well have the power of the purse at this point. Okay, but you have a bill that has gone through the House, and you have the same bill now has to go through the Senate, and the Senate is full of Democrats. The House is full of Republicans. The Senate is going to make that Republican piece of legislation look more Democratic. You can't present two different pieces of legislation to the president, so you have to iron out the differences between the two. That's where you get conference committee. Okay, a conference committee, the whole purpose of a conference committee is to resolve differences. A bill must pass both houses in exactly the same form in order to become law. It is a joint committee. A joint committee means it's made up of people of the House and the Senate. Okay, these members of the House and the Senate have to work with the two existing bills, the versions of the bills. They can't add any new stuff. They have to bring in, they have to work together with the final version of the bill that only has existing information from the House and the Senate piece of legislation. Hold on, somebody's bothering me. It's all right. It's Jamila Jordan. Beat her up in the hallway. She's messing up your lecture. I'm joking. Don't do that. I'm not promoting bullying on my screencast. Okay. All right. So compromises. You can't add anything new. It then heads back to the houses for a revote. And on this joint committee, you're generally going to find people who sponsored the bill in the selective houses, or the people that worked on the bill. So they go back to their respective houses. Like if a senator has worked on a piece of legislation, he wants this piece of legislation to pass, so he's going to lobby for it and push for it so it passes the vote the second time. Now, once there is one joint resolution or final bill, it goes to presidential action. Okay, that is called enrolling the bill. A bill is enrolled once it's passed both chambers and it is sent to the president. See, it says it right there, bill is enrolled. All right, the president has a nurturing side. One of the president's informal roles is chief legislator, and he is his best lobbyist. He has a policy agenda that's based on his party's platform, and he needs to maintain his party's coalition. The way that he maintains his party coalition is making sure his promises are fulfilled. So the president wants to sign legislation into law, like Obama pushed for the Affordable Health Care Act. He had a sympathetic representative introduce it. He pushed it through both houses of Congress, which wasn't hard because at the time they were both Democrats or had Democratic majorities. And he made sure that he fulfilled his promise of giving the American people affordable health care, whether we like it or not. Okay, the threat of the veto. Usually the president works legislation out with Congress. He needs them to further his agenda. But Congress doesn't worry too much. If they have a 2/3 majority support for a bill, or if if Congress has a 2/3 majority support for a bill and it's not a divided government situation, the president isn't going to worry about the threat of a veto. But generally, the president can threaten to veto a piece of legislation, and Congress will work it out and give him what he wants. Okay, veto is not signing it and not allowing it to become law. The number of vetoes a president uses depends on whether the government is divided or not, and if his threat to veto works or not. An oppositional Congress equals more vetoes. The bell's about to ring, so you're going to hear it. Get over it. It's fine. Pocket veto. If the president does nothing for 10 days and Congress is out of session, that law is vetoed and it can never be overridden. It's dead. If the president does nothing and Congress is in session, nothing for 10 days, that bill becomes law. But if Congress is in recess at that time, that bill is vetoed and it cannot become law and it cannot be overridden. Line item veto. The president can veto individual parts of a bill. He can't anymore, but he used to be able to veto parts of a bill, and he would take out spending and amendments in this process. So line item veto is striking out parts of a piece of legislation without getting rid of the whole piece of legislation. But no, he can't do that anymore. It's considered unconstitutional because he's basically writing legislation, and that's an overstep of his powers. Of course, if the president outright vetoes a bill, Congress can attempt to override it. That takes 2/3 vote in both houses. This is rare. That's why a threat of a veto works so well. In fact, it only has happened 2% of the time.